It's 7 o'clock in Alaska. This is Free the People. Welcome, everybody. Tonight we're going to hear from Midnight Sun Channel. So what's happening? What have you got on the state level and on the national scene?
All right. Here we go. It says Alaska Airlines has turned its back on the Iditarod after 40 years, no problems, and will no longer sponsor it, giving in to the demands of the domestic terrorist group known as PETA. To thank Alaska Airlines for crapping on the Alaska peoples, the populous peoples, including the underground, have decided to choose other airlines to patron because the service for Alaska Airlines had been declining in recent years, so the switch to other airlines had been anticipated, and we stand by what we say, which is that shoving humans into flying sardine cans whilst winging at top speeds through Earth's lower atmosphere is in and of itself inhumane. Other major companies that have chosen to turn their backs on the Alaskan traditions and our families and forefathers, and whom the peoples of Alaska choose not to cater to, and hope that you will do the same because of the way they have backstabbed us and our children for years now, are Coca-Cola. They also abandoned the Iditarod, as did Costco, Jack Daniels, Maxwell House, and Nestle, which if consumed will give you diarrhea and a bleeding rectum, Panasonic, Pizza Hut, Rite Aid, Safeway, State Farm, and Wells Fargo, whose logo is of a sad team of abused horses who pull around privileged human beings whilst being whipped from atop a stagecoach, which must be pulled at speeds only the space shuttles of the future would blast off into. If you will remember, PETA, which stands for the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, brought us such memorable situations as the time they let the domestic mink out of a farm in the dead of a blistering cold Minnesota winter, where the minks promptly froze to death within hours, and the handful that managed to not die from being indoor minks in 0-degree winter Minnesota weather outdoors died from starvation, having been raised in kennels and their food had always been promptly brought to them. Now, PETA had done their homework and attempted to form an actual working plan that had been looked at from every possible angle, all of the what-ifs, instead of lashing out emotionally like a child who never learned patience. We are sure that PETA could have avoided such an embarrassing tragedy if they knew what they were talking about at any given moment. What earned PETA a seat on the People's Terrorist Watch list was when PETA poisoned AKC kenneled show dogs in Tennessee with antifreeze to get their point across and force others to obey their own commands as if the people were the dogs to hill, and this is why they are considered a domestic terrorist group. We also noted that PETA is nowhere to be found concerning research of the mass bird die-offs occurring globally and almost daily, nor have they so much as squeaked, peeped, or tooted when Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal would have committed mass eradication of cows from planet Earth, which are a food source in much of the Western world and who are also worshipped elsewhere, as they were the favorite animal of Lord Krishna, and they serve as a symbol of wealth, strength, and abundance in the Hindu faith. Let's see, what else do we got here? It says Governor Mike Dunleavy had opened an investigation into the grandson of one of his campaign's largest donors, only to find that the grandson had been employed as an economic developer for the state in their trying times. But what had happened is we were told that Clark Penny became an easy target after the fact, and that the communist Democrats went for the jugular, which the peoples are calling foul. Clark Penny had claimed that he can't work when he is being threatened daily by Democrats, which brings into the question by the populace if Clark's competency is what actually caused his undoing. And having heard that the contract was only worth $100,000 and not the multi-million-dollar contract that his is used to winning, then why did Penny even bother at all? This is why the people are calling foul, because it sounds like a setup from the beginning. What else is going on here? It says Alaska Supreme Court Chief Justice Joel Bolger has recused himself from hearing the arguments on the merits of the recall of the governor, although Attorney General Kevin Clarkson, whose department is defending the Division of Elections, did not ask for a recusal. Others had, including the vice chair of the Alaska Republican Party, who penned an op-ed asking for Bolger to recuse himself. Alaska has no cases of the coronavirus as of today's date, which is March 4th, 2020, but Governor Mike Dunleavy has requested the legislature appropriate $4 million in state funding, which would release receipt authority for $9 million in additional federal funding to deal with the expected eventual arrival in the state of the coronavirus called COVID-19. In a press conference Monday morning, Governor Dunleavy said that the money would be used to hire 10 temporary full-time positions, including 5 new public health nurses, 3 nurse epidemiologists, and a microbiologist, and an emergency manager to help with emergency operations center should it need to be activated. Nick Sandman of the Covington Catholic Boys School has won his anti-defamation lawsuit against ABC, CBS, The Guardian, The Huffington Post, NPR, Slate, The Hill, and a publication called Gannett, which owns Cincinnati Enquirer and a lot of other miscellaneous small outfits. Separate lawsuits against Washington Post and NBC are pending. The teen was seeking $800 million in damages from CNN, NBC, and the Post. Federal Judge William Bertelsmann on Thursday ruled that the Covington students' $275 million libel lawsuit against NBC may proceed. Nick Sandman, age 16, sued NBC and other major news outlets in the aftermath of their coverage of a controversial interaction he and several of his classmates had with Native American activist Nathan Phillips near the Lincoln Memorial. Both Nathan Phillips and the boys group were attending the annual anti-abortion March for Life, while Phillips was participating in the Indigenous People March that somehow was scheduled for the exact same day. Additional footage in that case also shows a group calling themselves the Black Israelites, who were also seen blatantly provoking the young students by screaming racial slurs at them. And meanwhile, the Covington boy chaperone was nowhere in sight, or any other thinking and functioning adult that could have stepped in and intervened while the boys were being verbally harassed and abused. But never fear, the lawsuits are here. Hours after the so-called historic peace deal between the United States and the Taliban, the U.S. military then bombed the Taliban's positions Wednesday in the first such strike after the truce deal and the first attack in nearly 2 weeks. And Monday was the very day the Taliban declared it would resume operations against Afghan security forces, effectively ending the partial truce. If that wasn't enough, then the whole thing appears to have unraveled after Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid had again demanded the government release some 5,000 Taliban prisoners held by the Kabul government, thus further indicating that they were not committed to a truce and wasting more of everyone's time, money, energy, and costing more lives. First rule of an American: if you really want to make America great again, then don't negotiate with terrorists, ever. Bob Iger, the longtime Disney chief, has stepped down as CEO of that company, which is Disney. It was noted that he pushed back his retirement date several times in recent years. It was also announced that Bob Chapek will be the new CEO of Walt Disney Company. Dozens of people remain unaccounted for in Tennessee's hard-hit Putnam County, with 22 residents in the area listed as missing. Of the multiple tornadoes that tore through Tennessee, 24 people died and 18 of them were Putnam County residents. 5 of those residents were children under the age of 13. Frog in my throat. Says the tornadoes touched down Tuesday shortly after midnight, swirling through Nashville, its surrounding cities, while taking down power lines and demolishing homes and other buildings. Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and Michael Bloomberg have dropped out as Democrat candidates, leaving Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Elizabeth Warren to drive us all insane. Bloomberg has put his support behind Joe Biden, who likes to yell out phrases like cans of spaghetti sauce at random Coke closets, and referred to one of his supporters recently as a dog-faced pony soldier, whom later revealed that not only did his rambling surprise her, but it also hurt her feelings. Oh, but not so fast, Joe. A Ukrainian court today has ordered an investigation into whether Joe Biden violated any laws when he forced the March 2016 firing of the country's chief prosecutor. The Pechvitsky District Court of Kiev ruled last month that Shokin's lawyer had provided sufficient evidence to warrant a probe and obliged the authorized officials of the State Bureau of Investigation to accept the ex-prosecutor's complaint and start pre-trial investigations on the reported data. according to an official English translation of the ruling provided by Shokin's attorney. And that's the news from the North.
All right. Wow. Thank you. Yeah, thanks much, Shelley. Check out Shelley's daily, sometimes multiple times daily, Midnight Sun News from the North on YouTube. Just checking to see if Dave Bartels is in. Okay. We'll just, hopefully he'll check in. He'll come in and announce himself tonight. The stuff that I noticed in the news and kind of relates to what I wanted to talk about tonight is just listening to Dave Janda on Sarah Westall. And I don't know if you know who Dave Janda is or who Sarah Westall is, but these are kind of YouTube news folks. And they were just talking about the conviction of General Flynn and how he supposedly lied to the FBI. And I just wanted to point out, if you haven't seen the treatise on arrest and false imprisonment, there's lots of information in there, and if you need the treatise, I will send that out to you. But the takeaway from General Flynn to me is that you need to invoke your right to remain silent, just your right to not self-incriminate. And I wanted to send out everybody, or at least give you a link to commonlawyer.com. There's a book that Brent Winters sells called Don't Talk to Cops, and he goes through the basics that are in the treatise on arrest and false imprisonment. And so that book is available. It's only, 85 to 100 pages. It'll fit in your suit pocket. But the problem with General Flynn, I think, was that he interviewed with the FBI several times. And when you interview with the FBI, they write up a 302 form, and they transcribe what you say to them. And in the course of what Flynn was doing, the 302s, what they typically do is they take the 302s and edit them, and then they put them back in front of you, knowing that they're not factual, and they ask you to sign that this is what, is this what you said to us? And you say, yeah, this is what I said. And it's been adjusted, it's been edited, so it's not what you said, and then they charge you with lying to them. And so he went in and interviewed with the FBI several times, and they wrote up the 302s, and this week Bill discovered that his General Flynn's testimony to the FBI had been edited multiple times. And they were edited by a couple of FBI agents called Strzok and Page. And if Flynn had kept his attorneys that he originally went to, they never would have objected to the editing of these 302 forms and just basically the fraud. But I guess he's now being represented by somebody called Sidney Powell. And Sidney Powell is the woman who wrote the book License to Lie, who kind of uncovered the fraud that happened in Ted Stevens' case. She uncovered a large amount of what was going on there, and she seems to be an attorney and moral at the same time. So anyway, the issue of when you are pulled over and when you are stopped, and the police want to know, they want you to produce evidence against yourself. The proper thing to do is just, Tom has talked about it on our show quite a bit, that the best thing to do is basically to, let them know that you don't want to produce anything. You don't want to produce any kind of evidence that will incriminate you, and that you want to invoke your right to be free from self-incrimination, or your right to remain silent is a pretty typical way to characterize it. Kind of interesting, though, recently the Supreme Court ruled that you can't just be silent. You actually have to say something. You can't just clam up and assume they know that you're invoking your right to remain silent. You actually have to understand that you know that you have that right and communicate it to them in some way. I would imagine you could probably communicate that to police that are stopping you in writing. If you had something written down on a piece of paper, you could, get it to them, push it through your window, and notify them in writing that you don't talk to cops, or that you are invoking your right to be free from self-incrimination, something like that. But if you want to know more about all of the different due process rights involved in not talking to cops, check out that book by Brent Winters. And so anyway, any questions or comments on that part of due process and being free from self-incrimination? I was looking for a case that I quoted not very long ago when we had our show, and it was about the belligerent claimant, that due process is a fighting clause, and if you are influenced by honeyed words and moral suasion, then that's your fault. So if they can kind of trick you into testifying against yourself, or coerce you in, or extort you into testifying against yourself, that's your bad. It says that this court case says that due process is a fighting clause, and it's only due to the belligerent claimant. So if you give up any information about yourself, that's your tough luck. If you let them convince you somehow that you're going to be in worse shape, that's your tough luck. And that is absolutely the kind of coercion and extortion that goes on in dark holes everywhere, all around the country at all times, when they're trying to make you, when the guys with badges are trying to make you give up information on yourself. But absolutely the best possible thing that you can do is just stand your ground, stay free from self-incrimination, and just don't be talking. Don't be offering up any information that includes a driver's license, insurance, any kind of situation they ask you for, and it includes just even, I would argue, includes even giving your name or your address or identifying yourself. I think the very best thing is knowing that if they've stopped you, they have to have a reason to pull you over if you're traveling in your private property along the common ways. If they've stopped you, they have to have probable cause. So when they put their emergency lights on and they come to you, the burden of proof is now on them. So, let them prove they've got probable cause against you. I would say you don't have to give any kind of information whatsoever. Other people I've heard say that we have a duty to identify ourselves, but to me that's where the Chinese finger torture starts. That's where you start getting sucked in. The next topic I wanted to talk about, also kind of related to the news, if nobody has any comments, please feel free to jump in if you do. But the next topic is, I looked up the definition of rule of law because I hear it being bandied about a lot in the news. That, you know, now that Trump's the president, we want all these indictments to be acted upon, these sealed indictments, thousands and thousands of them, and we want the restoration of the rule of law. So very often I've noticed that if people are banning about a phrase like that, they may or may not know what it means. So I looked that up. I looked up common law's rule of law, and I was really interested to find a scriptural basis for rule of law. And this is, if you believe Brent Winters, and these are called tests or rules of law. And a test is something that very often gets used in the legal system. Here's the definition of the rule of law. It has rule of law, the phrase has 4 aspects. It's fundamental to the common law tradition. It stands on 4 principles. First, it signifies fixed standards of law that are the measuring rule for human behavior as opposed to the shifting preferences, caprices of men. So it's a fixed standard of law. The rule of law is also part of the unwritten common law principle stare decisis, which demands that a court observes findings as binding on cases with like facts. So stare decisis, if you go into a court and you can come up with a ruling that had similar facts to the one that you're involved in, stare decisis says that the same principles, have to apply. The third principle of rule of law is that it consists of court-fashioned tests. So a legal test is also an aspect of it. And the most well-known feature of the rule of law is, says it's seen in the common law's demand that the same standards of law govern every person, no matter how high placed or powerful. So they're going to apply to Hillary, they're going to apply to the dog catcher, but that is only one aspect. That's the common aspect that we think of. We think of rule of law as opposed to the rule of men, and that would be, the law applies all the time. It's a fixed standard of law. So that was interesting to hear the definition and the principles of what's referred to when you're talking about rule of law. As far as that one aspect, test goes, or rules of law, it sends you to the book of John, and that's a book that I've been sent to repeatedly by one of our friends that comes on this call, and he talks about, this is 1 John chapter either chapter 1 or 2 or 4. 1 John 1, 5 through 7. First John 8 through 10. I'm getting an echo or somebody knocking something back there. If you guys could mute out star 6 and then star 6 again if you want to talk. Okay, so anyway, 1 John 1, 5 through 7, 8 through 10, 1 John 2, 22 through 23, and 1 John 4, chapter 2. And basically, these are just a way for the reader that the reader may know, as opposed to merely hoping that he has eternal life, knowing first by his intellect and then through his experience. So one of the things that I'm looking at 1 John 4, 22, or I'm sorry, 1 John 4, 2. And that one is I'm just going to read it so that we're clear on what we're talking about here as far as the tests go. And that is, and this is, this is where legal tests come from. So it says, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. Every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of Antichrist. And then also, so that's the test. Did they say Jesus Christ was, God, or didn't they? And that's how you can test that spirit. So there are some similar kinds of things that are legal tests in the courts that are used, and it's just I bring this up just to show that the common law is consonant with Scripture, and we can look at it and we can see whatever the principle is, and we can take it straight back to the book and find out where this stuff originally came from. And so that would be common law, the land jurisdiction, as opposed to in the commercial jurisdiction. There's directly opposed to rule of law is rule of presumption. And I just found this the other day. A presumption is a rule of law, statutory or judicial, by which finding of a basic fact gives rise to the existence of presumed fact until presumption is rebutted. A legal device which operates in the absence of other proof to require that certain inferences be drawn from the available evidence. So, rule of presumption is, if we find that you, let's say you speak English and you live somewhere in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. If we find the proof that you give that address, then we're going to presume that you're a citizen of the state of Alaska and that you're subject to, every statute, code, regulation, and every kind of control that the legislature can dream up to put on you. We heard today from a guy named Ron Gibson, who's an expert in land patents, and he was saying that there are 12 presumptions that the federal government uses on everybody, and it starts with, we've heard it time and time again, it starts with birth certificate, the conversion of certificate of live birth into the birth certificate, and then it just goes from there with all the different accounts and trusts and things that are created after your name. That's rule of law and rule of presumption. And I just kind of have a smattering of stuff tonight. I'm not really cohesive tonight. I'm not on one topic. I'm just these are just some discoveries I've made this week, so I'm just kind of going from one thing to the other. The last thing was really interesting today. And I'll stop a minute here and just see if Dave's on the call yet. And Bill, do you have anyone muted, or is everybody just self-muted?
I had to mute Chuck again. I can unmute him here.
Okay, I'm just wondering if Dave's on the call yet, but I just wanted to
not that I see.
Sure. Okay, so all right. So the other thing is about your stuff, Chris, and it was really awesome, interesting finding it. But I wanted to give you a chance to tell us what's going on in the world. In your neck of the woods, what are you seeing? What are you observing? What's happening?
Well, the big thing that's I guess on everybody's mind and lips a little bit right now is this Corona, COVID, novel, basically the common cold, and really it's kind of getting insane. Sorry, is somebody trying to get in there?
Hey, Chris, can you speak up? I'm having trouble hearing you.
I can. Is this any better?
Yes, very good.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, about this COVID virus and everything. There's a whole lot about it. I think we touched on it last week. Some of the things I observed this week, I hadn't spent a lot of time in town, but whenever I was there, I ran into Ukulele Russ. If you're from up here around Alaska, you might know who he is. He's a buddy, and he said he was fixing to be heading back to Australia to go do some gigs, and he purchased the very last 4 N95 masks he could find around town here in Fairbanks, and this was a few days ago. But, he kind of thinks, along the lines of what's going on. But some other reports coming in from people like Cliff Hyde that says that basically everybody's going to get this and what I think is maybe everybody may already have it. It's just kind of got to be activated, kind of like a two-process thing. All these chemtrails over the years that they've been dumping on top of us has been full of all sorts of stuff, things we can't identify even. And we know that in the 40s they did testing over San Francisco with some kind of red bacteria.
We appeared to be about to disappear into the mist, and we'll see if it lives after this. But
caused a couple of deaths, and there were
this will be an interesting change of pace for us. You can see the mist
it's very likely
covers
that
the road.
Everybody around the planet already has this.
Visibility
and that it's just a matter of activating it, and probably more than likely the activation is through a bigger depression in the immune system, and that's maybe the HIV. They keep comparing it to an HIV, which is basically an immune suppression, where anything can attack your system. And that's exactly what the 5G technology does at the nanometer waves. At the level it travels, it affects the uptake of the oxygen in the blood. And so if you depress that instantly will depress your immune system, because your body has that biological function. It's going to react right off of that one way or the other. So that's kind of one of the things. A lot more borders have been shut off this week. One with Italy coming and going. I think we had a sports team that were going to be come here to play from Italy, and it got scratched because of years of that. At the same time, then I heard the borders were closed off, and now supposedly the Pope has the flu or whatever it's called.
Coming alongside the Salcha River.
It concerns a lot of people, but really it's kind of acting like the normal flu. There's probably more people that die from the normal flu. This one has been weaponized by the media, probably more than anything so far right now, to whip up fears and maybe to cover up the fact of the food. The timing of the food shortage is very appropriate with what's happening across the states right now too. Many states are having a huge disappearance of the dry goods on the shelves and whatnot. And I noticed that even here. I went through Fred Meyer's, one of the Kroger company, also owned by by a new fella, and the dry goods section was pretty heavily wiped out. There was some of that fake rice on the shelves that nobody wants to eat, but that was about it. I didn't find any dry beans at the store. There was sections of the produce that had kind of been wiped out a little bit, and I don't go there but every few weeks if possible or less, and I can't compare day to day, so I can't give you that information, but my observations from being in the store the other day, that's kind of what it was. It was also at a time of day that usually isn't such a decent crowd, but it seems like more and more people there than normal. The Costco parking lot has been full just pretty much the couple of days I passed. We thought about going through the other day and just decided not to because it was literally so full. So I don't know the interior condition of what's going on there. From around the state, I had heard, I had spoke with Holly was it yesterday? Spoke with her today, I believe it was, and she was just back from Norvik and getting some stuff from some of the natives there and dealing with the OCS issue. And her and the gentleman that was traveling as security for her both came down with something. The gentleman actually ended up going to the emergency room. So, Holly could definitely use prayers for anybody that would like to do so. Greatly, and she's a fighter, man. She's our sister. So that's the things I know of happening in the state as far as the coronavirus, as well as Dunleavy's, as Shelley had mentioned, is asking for money preemptively, which also unlocks more Fed money on the back end for this. Same time, nationally, California is using this as a reason to try to tap into the Fed money since they've been cut off of the other Fed money because of some of the sanctuary cities. So, let no good deed go undone. That's what it looks like there. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything to add on what they've seen this week for this thing that's happening around us right now. But one thing that has, it sounds like happening in China, we've known about the social crediting system, and this came into effect, I guess, just recently. I mean, almost on the heels of this or in conjunction with it, but they're already starting to let people travel in certain areas only if you use this QVID zip code through your technology to basically say who you are. It's basically that system that they introduced lightly now coming on to full effect. Basically the social crediting system. And you get a red light, a green light, or a yellow light, whether you can travel, whether you can leave the house, whether you can buy groceries.
We are approaching the crest of the first.
So that's just been put into effect on a hardcore scale, it sounds like, over in China as an effect of
through a mountain pass to
thing called the COVID
I suppose it's a mountain pass.
novel virus. So
Birch Lake,
pay attention to what's going on here too, because I think Trump and Pence would have been trumpeting what they're wanting to do, and it kind of sounds like a lot of the same stuff. They keep pushing this real ID keeps getting
Delta
pushed,
of the Tanana,
which is basically we know what it is, So just some awareness.
Let's say the Delta of the Tanana River.
Any comments or questions?
I have to fact check a little bit on that, but it is gorgeous, and we will show you.
So and then changing topic again.
I believe
so it looks like as of this week, Marie had called and spoke with the chief clerk's office, kind of seeing where the petition of redress is, and it looks like maybe the chief clerk and the legal department has tried to wash their hands of it and kicked it over and left it with the wannabe king Bryce Edgman,
peaceful there,
and leaving it for them to decide how to act. So a little more work
Indeed,
on that
Birch
front.
Lake.
We're going to have to keep forward.
A bit surprised to see it so early, but
Also,
it's been a while since I
received
traveled this road,
yesterday
so
from
that makes sense.
Shannon from on the call last week, the one of her petitions of remonstrance she sent over, and it's got some great information in it. I forwarded it.
So we've climbed a bit
to
in
you, Maria. I'm not sure
elevation,
if you had a chance to look at it yet,
we're
but
coming over the crest of
it's
yet
worth
another
a look
hill.
and maybe even
We
send it
can
out
see
for
the
anybody that may want
next
a
hill
copy.
in the distance.
It makes it pretty
It'll be,
straightforward for some of it, and some of
like
the other
taking
stuff
a curve in the road
discuss
and
on it. But it's got a lot of good case stuff on here.
continuing toward the right.
I haven't had a chance to review it. What's the petition about? What's the
Yeah, the road
subject?
conditions are a little bit
this
rough
one's
at
kind
the
of just
moment.
like when,
Frost
it's all put
heaves
together,
happen when
in
moisture
form.
collects under the road,
And it gives the
and then it
basic manual
freezes,
procedures
and the force
links
of
to
the
different things.
expanding water
It
as
gives,
it freezes
state
is so strong
constitutional excerpt.
that it buckles the
Of
asphalt
course, hers
of the
is
road.
geared towards
So we get
Michigan
these
and
things called
statute.
frost heaves,
It
and
still
they
has
make
a
our
lot of
roads
the
bumpy,
18 U.S.C.
but
code.
there's not much you can do about them
and
except for
it shows all the
constantly
executive
fix the
orders
road.
on the
So
front
sometimes
page,
it's easy
where it's petition
with
remonstrance.
roads that are
This
less
one was
traveled
in the 2019
to
congressional session
leave
of the
them
state of
as they
Michigan.
are, and they get
And it's
a little
showing
more
the motion
bumpy.
40 under joint rules 40.1.0. Then it leaves a place, it says your name versus the agency.
Yeah.
And then it also
Yeah, I was trying
states
to think,
Michigan's
if I had a name in
articles
Chinese,
that fall
like
in
would a Chinese name
pursuant
it
to
mean something? It's a word that means
emolument
something, or
violation.
just
Such
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Why don't we go through? Why don't we kind of take it from the top for people who haven't, that they haven't been studying this yet. The petitions for redress and remonstrance. That's the First Amendment of the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting the right of the people to assemble and petition, peaceably assemble and petition their government for the redress of grievances. And we've kind of talked about how that's a single right. Sometimes you'll find editions of the Constitutions where they'll put the commas in weird places. And so, let's see.
There's one called Jade that's green.
Just going to go back here to the petitions. Dave, if you are on, feel free to interrupt me anytime.
You can judge on the age of people from
Getting a lot of static back there. But, okay. So, if you're looking at your Constitution, the First Amendment, Article and Amendment,
Yeah, I think my name
the first,
in
more
Greek.
properly.
Here's a rumble strip. My name in Greek means pure.
And you look at the different clauses in there.
Pure.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment
I think
of
my middle name
religion or
means
prohibiting
light.
the free exercise thereof.
Yeah. So
That's
I don't know
number
what that
one.
would be in Chinese.
Congress shall make no law respecting or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. That's number two. Congress shall make no law
How do you say it again?
respecting the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Read that all as one. And so what we find out is in the Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure, there are ways for us to enter into a joint session of the legislature. In fact, by petition, we call a joint session of the legislature into session, and that's called the General Court. And the General Court meets to hear our grievances. That's their main duty. And so what we've been doing in Alaska and been learning from a guy in Florida named Chris Hallett, who started E-Clause LLC, and a guy in Idaho named Kirk Pendergrass, who has a YouTube channel called Kirk's Law Corner. What we're learning from them is the pertinent parts of the Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure that allows us to very quickly redress our grievances should any officer at any level of government exceed their emolument, meaning the written word that defines their office. So if they're acting
on our journey on the Richardson Highway, may I direct your attention to Patriot Fireworks and the Screaming Weasel gift shop. The Screaming Weasel has a sign that looks like an unidentified flying object.
And have it be heard.
We don't know why this sign is
no
put
need
there.
To hire an attorney.
But it is a gift shop, and we don't know what they
No
sell.
long drawn out
This is a welding company with a candy cane sign.
You know, somebody violates your rights, and you basically
yes, they do metal
you're
work.
letting the legislature know that some of their creatures
and we are approaching the city of North Pole.
Their bounds. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yes, on our right.
And of course, the devil's in the details, and as you start to get into it, you start to realize.
Yeah, that's one of the exits to it.
Okay, how do we write
North
this
Pole,
petition
Alaska.
up and then move it through the legislature in a manner that we
There's
want
a
to move
place
it through.
to buy gifts because it was originally meant to be a toy factory
templates that help us,
but that didn't exactly work
figure out what the motions
so what they have
are,
instead is the Santa Claus house.
Figure out how to get
so
these
you can
things
come
moving
and
through.
buy letters to Santa for
share that
children,
to everybody.
or you can come see the
share that out to
reindeer
everybody
in the
anyway.
Reindeer Academy. I think it's called Antler Academy. And your kids can come and sit on Santa's lap.
That's a good thing.
So it's an interesting
The other
time.
thing I did, I don't know if anybody
Yes,
on
that
the
is
call
the
got
Santa Claus
to
house.
read
There's a giant
what I'm
Santa
working
Claus.
on by way of
And here is
petition
Antler
redress.
Academy.
And
on
that's kind
colder
of
years,
what I'm
they will
doing
have
is
the Christmas in Ice
I'm following
carving
through on what you did with your
festival.
petition, Chris.
But unfortunately, this year it was not cold enough to have enough ice to have the
Chris's
festival.
petition.
So
You
they
want to
had
talk
to
about
skip
your
it this
petition
year.
and what happened and that kind of thing?
How won't you describe what you're doing?
We are now leaving North Pole.
Okay, yeah. All right. So his petition
At least
went in first.
The main part
he
of the
wrote
city
up a
here. I mean,
Declaration of Truth.
Yes.
And it was
so now we are continuing
really
along the
one.
Richardson, also known
and
as
it just gave the
Highway
date,
2,
starting with the 4th
I
of
believe.
July and whatever.
And that is going to take us to
there
Delta
were that he
Junction.
went through this process.
In approximately
But he basically told
an hour,
the legislature
2
that
hours,
another
I'd say.
department of government had pushed his hugel beds into
and here
his
again is our
catchment pond up on his
talented
land.
driver, Echo.
And he had
Here she is.
he had required the information from the agency.
And now we appear to be about to disappear into the mist, and we'll see if it lifts after this. But
and so he took this petition of redress to the legislature.
You can see the mist as it
that was the very
covers
first
the
one
road,
that's ever been
visibility may get lower
into the state of Alaska legislature.
There's the sun.
So
trying to shine.
Before he sent it, I made a phone call one day and I talked to the chief clerk's office because that's the natural place. The chief clerk's office in the House of Representatives in other states where they have redress committees listening to these petitions. The petition goes to the House of Representatives and then that is scheduled to be read on the floor. And so we went to the chief clerk's office and we said, hey, we need to know the rules and procedure for filing petitions of redress in the state of Alaska. And she said, well, I don't know anything about that, but I'll get back to you. And she called the legal department, which is not Department of Law, but it's legislative legal. And legislative legal advises the legislature on the legalities of what they're doing, and they also write up legislation. And anyway, the chief clerk's office called the legal department, and the legal department confirmed that, yes, in fact, you do have the federal and the constitutional right to redress. And I said, great, good. Yep, I've read the First Amendment and I know that. So what's the rules and what's the procedure? And their response was, send it in and we'll make up a procedure. So we knew before Chris sent his petition in that that's kind of what we were up against, and so he sent it in. And now they've been playing, kind of a game of hot potato with it. So Chief Clerk's office didn't know what to do. They knew they didn't have a procedure. So they sent it to the legal department, and the legal department didn't want to touch it. So they sent it to the Speaker of the House. So I kind of went in and kind of got tossed around, not unexpectedly, the other day, and it basically, what Chris said, Chief Clerk's office doesn't want to touch it. Legal department has said, no, we're not dealing with it. You need to talk to the Speaker of the House. And what the legal department, the gal at the legal department told me yesterday was the petitions need to go to the Speaker of the House, and when the Speaker of the House gets it, he'll decide whether or not he wants to act on it. And so that's not that's not the answer.
Tyrannical?
I think they're just so used to doing whatever they do that they're just doing what they always do, So
right there in the First Amendment, it's just so blatant that they are acting as tyrants.
Do you know what you're running into with what you just said? I think it's a filtering system, and they keep passing it around to everyone, and they keep denying they will not handle it or can't, and so forth. They pass it on to the next person. All the while, they're trying to determine the best way to get over this thing without doing anything about it.
Yeah, they hope we'll forget about it and go away, and I would encourage all of us not to do that.
But the next question is, who is at the top determining this procedure? And I think you will find that's probably the state level of the territorial United States, and you know who that would be.
The state level of the territorial United States. Wait. The municipal would be the Pope.
There you
go.
The
territorial would be the Queen.
That's right.
But the Pope's got the flu and the Queen's been deposed. So I guess we're going to have to do it, John.
I think that's the situation.
Well, we've got the manual, and those are the rules. We've also got Alaska's joint rules, and we've also got the ability to be the squeaky wheel. So anyway, I hear what you're saying. It's the runaround. Obviously, we had to expect that.
But
you got to expect that.
But they don't want people to know that it should be traced back that way. See, if they keep people dumbed down and just perplexed, that's what they want.
Of course, but so we're gonna move beyond that a little bit, and what I really like about what Chris Hallett's done is he's approaching this from loss prevention, the loss prevention and the stop loss loss, which people have told me, people that are working really closely with government has said everything is about loss prevention. So everything that these corporate entities are doing in government these days, they're trying to mitigate the amount of, lawsuits they're going to be taken for. And so what Chris has done is said, look, everybody in the state should want this, because if the petitions of redress and remonstrance come in, and the state impeaches the bad actor or sanctions them in some way or fires the bad actor, then they mitigate, they distance themselves from those actions that are done outside of the jurisdiction that the state has given them, out of the offices or the emoluments, all the same thing. So it gives the state an opportunity to hear, okay, we've got some bad actors, okay, no, you can't do that, you're a bad actor, we're impeaching you, judge, we're impeaching you, cop, we're impeaching you, dog catcher, because you're outside your office, you're not acting in accordance with your job description. So once they impeach that, the purpose of the Attorney General sitting in the governor's office is he's supposed to criminally go after and pursue, criminal or civil action against those people. That's his job as the Attorney General. They're not supposed to be, the Attorney General is not supposed to be going after us, the people, the creator of government. The Attorney General is there to keep the creatures of government that they created inside the bounds of their duties. So that's a good part of the rationale, right? So yeah, the state should want these. So now my petition is about explaining all that to them in the form of a petition. And my petition is really, really pretty basic. And it says, I'm petitioning the government to come up with a process by which the people can regularly exercise the right of redress and remonstrance. And I give the reasons why they should want it, and then the basis of our claim to it, which would, it's in there. You can read it. It's the basis of our claim is that we're the creator of government. Basically, we're sovereign. It starts out with they're under an oath of office, and then it goes through the amendments. Straight up say it that we have the right, and it goes through the basically the basis of our claim to it.
When you said that they would want it, who were you referring to?
State of Alaska.
Well, here again, see, that trace it back. And also, when you talk about the Attorney General, and this is more of a question than a statement, what does that name imply, an Attorney General?
I don't know. I think it's a secret society kind of position, like the what was that one? The Inquisition.
It might imply a military relationship, a general, see.
Definitely. But I'm looking up that. If you look at the secret society, all the titles, they all seem to be in the government, in the military. They're all through there. But yeah, it's just some military post. Who knows? But I mean, don't bring up the arguments that you don't want to have to argue. Let's just talk about the arguments that we can make. That are, that we have a chance of making and following through on. That would be my tack anyway. My strategy.
Isn't the I realize that anyway, I'll say it like this. Isn't the best strategy to it's okay to make your best effort along the lines that you have been talking about, but perhaps simultaneously to make that effort to establish the alternative law of the land common law assembly, so that you don't have to appeal to them. And along that line, earlier you said something about, if I could say this, you can stop me any time if I'm interfering. Earlier you said something about you mentioned Ron Gibson, and perhaps you mentioned something about his making a statement with regard to land patents. And this is very important. I was trying to determine. He said something about he used the concept of presumption regarding land patents. In other words, they're presuming all the variations of what has been imposed upon people regarding land patents over these many years. Well, that is, as far as I can see, based on much fraud. So how could you come up with anything moral and ethical if the land patents are being determined with the historic fraud that they had imposed upon them? Right?
Yeah. Well, I could try to deconstruct some of that, and that is, I think he did a really good job of explaining what has gone on with the land patents, and I'll just kind of go through real quick what he was talking about there, and then I wanted to kind of relate it to what Chris is going to have to do eventually on his land. But he started out. I made two references to Ron Gibson. The first reference was I was talking about rule of presumption, and Ron Gibson was saying today in an interview there are 12 rules of presumption that the courts use and that the federal government uses immediately. They presume that you're a U.S. citizen, or you're not a state national. They presume you're a legal person and that you're acting in the commercial jurisdiction. There are a lot of things that they'll presume, and actually, Ron Gibson did not go through the list of these 12.
Where does one find?
Huh?
Where does one find those 12?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe I need to write him, send him an email. But the point was, we're talking about what I was trying to do at that point was just compare and contrast rule of law with rule of presumption. Now, if you think about it, you've got three jurisdictions. You've got land, air, and water. The commercial jurisdiction is the water, the international jurisdiction of the sea. Okay, that's commerce. All right? So what has happened, and the problem with the presumptions is we thought we were coming under land law. We thought we were the people of the Union States. We thought the Declaration mattered. We thought that the Bills of Rights were our common law, that our Constitution mattered, meaning the what we believe in. We thought our freedom to worship the way we wanted to worship and live our lives consonant with the way we worship. We thought all that mattered, but in truth, the frauds have happened in the background, and the governments are dealing with us in a different jurisdiction than we thought we were in. So they've got us in the commercial jurisdiction, or they don't actually have us. They have a derivative of our name in the commercial jurisdiction. And when they refer to that derivative, we think they're talking to us, and we go in. And so that's the
They make it very difficult for us not to go in, because they put that situation on us, say, with regard to paying bills with a check. And the check has the all-cap name at the top. And if you want to pay it that way, or almost have to pay it that way, then you sign down there with a micro print line, authorized signature, blah, 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 and you're signing, so you're connecting the two where you really don't want to. So,
yeah, we're giving joinder. We're agreeing to be that derivative, that we're agreeing to act in a corporate capacity and be in the commercial because of ignorance. It's ignorance, right?
Can I interrupt one thing? I've heard this term law of necessity. Perhaps we could use that to our maximum benefit. Have you ever heard of that? If you don't have a choice, then you say, I'm doing this as a law of necessity. I've got to survive, and et cetera,
Well, that's what we all do. But basically, we've had our names unlawfully converted. They've been unlawfully converted. Trusts, public charitable trusts have been created. We've grown up in a system. We have grown up in the system that is commercial in nature, but we were never told that we're leaving the land jurisdiction and that the only people that have the ability to live under a system of common law and live in a manner consistent with their values are people who know. And we perish for our lack of knowledge, and we haven't known. But this is the whole point of why we get together, so that we can learn and we can understand and we can make a really big distinction between the law of the land, which is common law, and the law of the city, which is the commercial law. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we're going to make this choice. We're not going to go in anymore. We've made a distinction, and we're not going in. And some people, yeah, John, absolutely, they continue under law of necessity. It's the only, supposedly the Federal Reserve note is the only type of money that we have access to. And so it's a necessity that we use it. Now that's obviously changing, but
that's not quite true, because coinage money is not Federal Reserve notes, right?
Right, coinage or U.S. notes. U.S. notes, there's a Coinage Act, 1700s Coinage Act. The U.S. notes have never been taken. They've never been they're not being printed, but you can use a Federal Reserve note and denominate and say that it's going to be denominated, it's going to be a U.S. note. You can denominate all the digits in your bank account as U.S. notes. And that comes under it has to do with the legal tender laws. Whenever we leave the land jurisdiction, there always has to be a way to get back to it. We always have to have a way that we can say, okay, no, I opt out. I'm opting out of commercial. I'm not a commercial person. And you rebut the rule of presumption. And that's what we talk about all the time. We talk about making a declaration, rebutting the presumptions, and then creating superior evidence and putting superior evidence on the record. So now I'm trying to get back to this Ron Gibson idea and where he started, and get to the land issue, and what it has to do with all of this. Okay.
Could I say something before you say that? I'm just bringing this up because I think I put a date on this February 29th, 2020, and this is something that I got off of Anna von Reich's writing. It said that that's the term she used, I guess you're talking about a living law firm or something, we brought forward all land patents in the U.S. in 2005 and in 2015, we made the public acceptance and reissued our sovereign letters patent. Anyone who claims otherwise should be sent to herself, Anna von Wright, directly for rebuttal. What do you think of that? I'm not sure I understand all the implications on that, but I sure would like to know. I mean, that's 5 years ago. That sounds important enough to have spread it far and wide to know the truth of it.
Okay, I'm sorry, John. I went to mute out, and somehow the phone hung up. But what was the upshot of what you wrote? What were you saying?
Well, I said this. This is dated. I jotted down on here. February 29th, 2020, just about a week ago, I guess or so. Not quite. This is from an article by Anna von Wright, and she says, we brought forward all land patents in the U.S., in the United States, in 2014, and in 2015 we made the public acceptance and reissued our sovereign letters patent. And then she says anyone who claims otherwise should be sent to herself, Anna von Wright, directly for rebuttal.
Okay. All right. So she makes these claims, but she doesn't tell everybody how to access the information. So I don't know how to access it, but let me just.
Might be a good idea to try to contact her and ask her that information.
Yeah, but you can't contact her because she's so busy that she can't deal with anybody. So I don't know. All I can tell you is
maybe I should try, huh?
I would rather just work with somebody that I know is really helping people. He's actually helping people.
Well, supposedly there's a claim that she has done this on our behalf, and she wants people to come back to her, so that if she's implying that they are going to find fault with it, and then she will rebut it and show her evidence.
Okay. So all right, can I go on with what
you
the rationale? All right, so just really quick in a nutshell, the way he explained it was that when the U.S. government, the federal government, and the states incorporated, I guess, is about when it happened. They changed our names, and they changed jurisdiction from land to commercial. The land patents were converted into block and lot names, and the land titles were converted from land patents to real estate. Okay, there was a title to real estate. I need to get through the entire rationale first, okay?
Well, you are getting this information from Ron Gibson, but I'm wondering if you read that he sent out, Paul Stramer sent it to me, and you probably sent it to you too. I don't know for sure, but it was an advertisement for Ron Gibson's seminar that he did very currently, and it said on that, and I wrote it down because it was so kind of surprising to me. He said that when the people that had patents on their property recorded it, that's the way he said it, recorded it, he said they didn't realize, and maybe they registered it without realizing the implication of it, but anyway, it went into the recorder's office, And that's where they said, they told the property owners that, okay, we'll take care of this and we'll send you back your copies of this, your paperwork, the originals, I think they were supposed to, but they didn't send the originals back. They sent back the statutory warranty deeds, and they kept, and this is a kicker, they retained the patents, they archived them in the recorder's office, he said. So that's where we should go and demand the originals back, I think. That's what we should do.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, John, just hold off, okay, because all you're doing is confusing the issue. If I can convey the meaning I'll convey the meaning that he gave, and then after I'm finished, you can ask your questions, but you're just muddling the issue.
Really?
Okay. Just let me get through it. All right. So it's very, very simple, and that was that when we went from our proper jurisdiction from law into the commercial jurisdiction legal, land patents and land titles were converted to real estate, and they gave remedy. They gave a way to get back to the land law, the land jurisdiction. And I missed exactly what he said, where the source of that is. I'm going to have to go back and watch his seminar again. But there is a way to convert. There's a way to convert your real estate back into get off the commercial jurisdiction and back onto the land jurisdiction, and it's a process. And if you don't follow the process and you don't convert it back, you'll owe property taxes, and if you don't pay your property taxes, the land will be taken. So the upshot and the important thing is that you need to know what the process is to convert your real estate back into the real ownership, the allodial ownership of the land. And that's what the seminar does. It gives the process, and it's the process that we partially followed the process when we had our trouble. And we can kind of go through that at some point. But anyway, I think probably the very best thing to do with the Ron Gibson material would be for people to go out there and find it and start studying it, and then we can have a conversation about the process and how you do the process, and how this works and how you can convert back to being in the right jurisdiction and having your land having your land come under that patent. It says that once that patent is issued, unless it is subject, it has a reservation in it, a subject to clause, that patent can never be acted upon by anyone. And he referred us to Article 1, Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty or alliance or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin tender in payment of debts. The three that he talked about in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution: pass any bills of attainder, and that relates really directly to the city taking your truck without due process of law. So any bills of attainder, any ex post facto law, or in regards to land patents, law impairing the obligation of contracts. If you have a piece of land that is got a patent then nobody can get into that. The state can't get into it because that would be impairing an obligation of a contract, and that would be them getting into your private business. So that's where you take it. And that's what I wanted to get to in regards to the taking of Chris's land. There it is. There's the place in the Constitution you can point to, Article 1, Section 10, no state shall impair the obligation of contracts, and that would be related to your land patent. And I believe the reason why they told you why State of Alaska says they don't recognize land patents, even when they're issued by the State of Alaska, is because of the conversion into the commercial jurisdiction and the presumption that you are a commercial person and that you've abandoned your land law rights. So they're just totally operating in the legal realm, and so they presume they don't have to recognize anything about that jurisdiction. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's true. But, I mean, even a lot of the stuff I had sent with, like, whenever I was doing my allodial patent, it, it basically told them who I was and all that stuff, too. No, these people just don't know. Not only do they not know, they don't care.
Well, he's really specific about the process you have to follow to convert it back. And, yeah, I guess Anna von Reitz has already done that for you, but I don't see any specific information about how to access what she claims to have done. So I wouldn't put any stock in that. What I would do is I'd follow this process that Ron lays out, and it's relatively simple. You get a certified copy of your warranty deed that says your name on it. You get a certified copy of the land, 3 copies of the certified copies of the land patent, and I don't know if he said 1 or 3 or whatever, certified copies of the chain of title. Okay, so you take those and you give public notice that you own that land, and you ask all comers to come in and say, if they have a lien against that land or whatever they have. And then you put, by putting notice in the newspaper, and if nobody comes forward, then you cure that claim to the land, and then it can't be attacked. And this is what he's saying, is that nobody can ever take the land, regardless, and that the property taxes now no longer are going to be owing the you do have to follow the process and get the certification and show that it's you, and go through the due process, because if you don't, it'll be presumed that that's just real estate and that you owe taxes, and they can take it and sell it. And
And are you implying or stating that if you go through this process that the recorder's office is going to give up your patent that they have archived?
I didn't have any problem at all getting mine. I got mine the same afternoon from BLM. I got a certified copy of the land patent in a couple of hours.
On your property?
On the land up at where we were, yeah. On the land where we made this. We did this process. We did the whole process. We gave notice. We chronicled everything. We still have the whole process. We have a claim in Superior Court. But what happened was the credit union did what they always do, and that is make up a phony bill, send you a phony bill for rent, past due rent. They take it into district court, and they pretend it's a landlord-tenant relationship, and then they get a writ of, what's that? When they bring the guns and the troopers and surround your neighborhood and pretend like writ of assistance. Yeah, writ of assistance. They get this writ of assistance, and they get the cops to come and surround your neighborhood and kick you out. But then, like in my case, apparently, I didn't realize it, but the neighbor drove up and he said, "Geez, Maria, I didn't know you were. I have a new respect for you. They've got the entire neighborhood surrounded. There's, 6 cars up there. There's 3 cars down here." And they knocked on the door, and I told them they were trespassing, and they said, "Oh, no, we're not." And they pulled the door open and came in the house, and they had this huge gun pointing at me, and anyway, so we had cleared out a long time before, but it was getting cold, and so I went back just to keep the fire going in the fireplace so that everything wouldn't freeze up. And they did not come when they said they would, so I was at the house keeping it warm. So they rousted me out. I left. They gave me back my guns and my ammo that I had with me. And I told them to have a nice day, and I walked down the driveway. And right after that, the cops were there, and there was a guy in a van that was from Five Brothers, somewhere in Michigan, I think, was the home base of Five Brothers, and they were going to winterize the house. And the guy in the van who was there to winterize the house saw the cops with the guns. He was there with the cops. He knew that they were surrounding the neighborhood, and they were getting me out under force of arms. But he still put up stickers all over the house that said, "I found this house abandoned, so I'm taking it over." So even with all of that bullshit they pulled, they still had to make a false claim on abandonment. They still had to pretend that house. So legally, they're saying they found that house abandoned. So that was pretty interesting.
What did the credit union have to do with it? I noticed you mentioned the credit union.
Oh, that was, they are the pretender lenders. They pretended to lend us money. But they took us in and made up a lie. It's all fraud. So we thought we were there. We had done our due diligence. We had put it back. We had brought the land patent forward we had done all the work, followed the process, and brought it forward in Bill's capacity as man. And I wasn't on it. I wasn't any part of the legal paperwork on it. But he brought that land patent forward in his capacity as man. And we were in district court 4 hours arguing and explaining. And at the end of the 4 hours, we stood the whole time. We stopped the other attorney from talking. We brought in Trinzi versus Pagliaro, statements of counsel or mere assertions. The guy had no firsthand knowledge. There was a lot going on. I won't go through the whole 4 hours, but the point is, at the very end, it was the magistrate said, we don't usually do this. This is very unique. The situation is unique. We think you have a point. I think you have a point, and I want you to appeal this. So we're giving you 30 days so that we can make sure you have plenty of time to appeal this decision. And he said, usually these writs of assistance are, they come in on Tuesday, you're out by Friday. And he said, so to get 30 days is very, very much, he's never done it before, whatever. So it didn't issue right away. It was 30 days hence. And we made a decision not to appeal because we felt that if we appealed, we'd be giving jurisdiction. And we felt that it was a stronger position to just declare it a void judgment because the district court didn't have jurisdiction. So that's basically how it went. We chose not to appeal. The writ of assistance finally became active. 15 days later, they acted on it, and that's when I was at home keeping the house warm. And after all of that, they still had to put a false claim on abandonment. So, it's just a racket. But I would say, we followed a process that was outlined to us by Gus Breton, which is very similar to the Ron Gibson process. And I would say we came really, really close. In fact, because of what's going on now, I think we probably would have made it based on our actions. There were a few things we could have done slightly better, but we still have a claim in Superior Court. We can go back in any time and start, it's never finished. Once you have a claim and a case number, you can put in a notice any time. So, a judgment can be reversed, a judgment can be recognized as void. You can have new information. You can open up that claim again, and we definitely have a claim to that land. And we did do our due diligence to put that into back from a commercial jurisdiction back into the land jurisdiction, but in their ignorance, the title company and the district court judge and the Superior Court judge knows. He was just probably crooked and basically not going to let us win. But the district court judge seemed to be acting in pretty good faith. So anyway, that's kind of how it went. And my thought is we just keep examining what we've done and figure out what we could have done better, and now we've got another situation with Chris's land that we can learn from, and we can continue to perfect what we're doing and do it better and get the results. So. So anyway,
$30 below where we're aiming.
We got 19 below. So look at that. We're warm in Delta.
Sweet.